Hey boys and girls, I'm back today with another frog book for you guys. And this one has a lot of interesting facts in it about frogs. So our book today is called Fantastic Frog Facts. So when we're reading this book, I want you to think about the book we read, Tale of a Tadpole. And I want you to be thinking about how our book today, Fantastic Frog Facts, are similar, so how they're the same, or how they're different, okay? So we're going to talk about that after we read our story today. Fantastic Frog Facts. So this book has a table of contents. So a table of contents tells us about what we're going to learn about in our book and also where we could find information. So right here it says, what are frogs? We can find that on page 4. How do baby frogs grow? We can find that on page 8. How do frogs drink? We'll learn about that on page 11. So this book is really good to keep on your bookshelf, because if you wanted to ever find some more information about frogs, all you have to do is open it up and say, ooh, I want to know, how do frogs move? And I can find that on page 12. Okay, let's see. So the first page we went to is, what are frogs? Frogs are animals. Frogs have 2 big eyes, long back legs, slimy skin, and webbed feet. Oh, our story yesterday talked about the webbed feet, didn't it? They come in many colors and sizes. Did you know that frogs can be many colors and sizes? Look at this one. He has the colors yellow and black. And this one, he has orange feet and red eyes. Did you know that frogs and toads are not exactly alike? Did you know that? Miss Wallace did not know that for a long time. So that's very interesting. I would love to see a frog that looks like this. In this story, it only talked about one kind of frog, the frog that looks like this. Where do frogs live? Frogs live in many parts of the world. Most frogs live in swamps or ponds. So our book that we talked about yesterday talked about a frog that lives in a pond. So this book is telling us that many of them will be found in a pond or a swamp. Some frogs can live in the desert. So that's something new. Did you know that most frogs begin life in water but spend the rest of their life on land? So the frogs, when they're tadpoles, they live in the water. But then when they turn into a frog, they can live on land too. So this shows frogs. Look, this one is sitting on a leaf and this one's climbing up, looks like a part of a plant. How do baby frogs grow? The first step, baby frogs hatch from eggs and live in water. The second step, baby frogs are called tadpoles. The third step, as they get bigger, they grow legs and lose their tail. The fourth step, it takes a few months for most tadpoles to become frogs. So our book that we talked about yesterday talked about the life cycle of a frog too. So this story also talked about that. How do frogs catch food? Did we learn about that yesterday in our story? This book told us that the frog was going to catch a fly. Let's see what this book says. Most frogs eat insects and small animals, such as worms and snails. Did you know frogs eat worms? Most frogs use their tongue to catch food. And then it says, did you know that frogs sink their eyes into their head to help them swallow their food? Wow. So from this book, we learned today that frogs will eat insects, small animals, such as worms or snails. How do frogs drink? Frogs do not use their tongue to drink. They take in water through their skin. They need to keep their skin wet. So they don't drink water like me and you do out of a cup and through our mouth. They actually get their water nutrients from staying wet. That's very interesting. Did you know that frogs shed their skin and then eat it? Oh, I did not know that. Look at these frogs. They're blue. Wouldn't that be cool to see a blue frog? How do frogs move? Frogs have strong legs that are good for jumping long distances. They have webbed feet that help them to swim. So here's their webbed feet, and that helps them to swim. That's what we talked about in our story yesterday. Did you know that some frogs have sticky toes that help them to stick to things? So this frog has some sticky toes, and that's going to help him keep his balance if he's climbing up something. Oh, here's a picture of a frog swimming. Did you know that some frogs can jump as far as 20 times their own length? So that means that they're super strong jumpers. They can jump for long distances. Why do frogs hide? Frogs are food for many animals. Some frogs even eat other frogs. I did not know that. Frogs hide to stay safe. So they are food. Frogs are food for other animals. So sometimes they have to hide from animals. Did you know that some frogs hide from enemies by changing colors to look like their surroundings? Wow. So some frogs can even change their colors to blend in and make it harder for their predators to find them. I did not know that. Conclusion. So that means the end of our story. Frogs are interesting animals. They live in most places around the world. Wow, this book was extremely interesting, and we learned a lot of different frog facts. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do something called comparing our stories. So we're going to look at Tale of a Tadpole, and we're going to look at the book Fantastic Frogs. And I want to see if we can come up with ways that they are the same, and ways they're different. So in this story, Tale of a Tadpole, it talked about a frog that lived where? Very good, in a pond. This story talked to us about how frogs can live in lots of places, right? So I'm going to put Tale of a Tadpole here. Tale of Tadpole. And then over here we'll do Fantastic Frogs. And then I'm going to draw a line. We'll do actually circles. It's called the Venn diagram. So we have two circles. And guess what? Part of their circles is going to touch. Let me show you guys. I'm going to draw it here on my paper. And I'll be ready to share it with you. So here we go. Okay. So the things that are different about the books, they go over here under their title. The things that are the same, they're going to go in the middle. Okay. Miss Walls didn't leave a whole lot of room for the middle. Might have to change that up a little bit. Because there was several ways that these books were the same, wasn't there? This is better. There we go. Okay. So Tale of the Tadpole, it talked about a frog that lives where? In a pond, right? So it only talked about the frog that lived in the pond. But in our book Fantastic Frogs, where did it say that frogs could live? It did say that they could live in ponds, but it also said they could live in swamps, and it even said that some frogs live in the desert. Wow, I would love to learn more about frogs that could live in a desert, because deserts are very dry and hot. Okay, so let's see what else our book Fantastic Frogs talked about. Oh, you know what? It talked about the life cycle of a frog. Tale of a Tadpole, did it talk about the life cycle of a frog? Yeah, so they both taught us about the life cycle of a frog. So how it starts as an egg, and then it changes into the tadpole, and then it changes all the way into a frog. So both stories talked about that. Our Fantastic Frog book told us that frogs will eat worms and snails. And in our story, Tale of a Tadpole, it only talked about how frogs will eat flies. So that was definitely interesting, learning about that they'll also eat the worms and the snails. Okay? So in our Fantastic Frog book, it told us that they do not drink, that they take their water in through their skin. Okay? So they need water. We'll put that under Fantastic Frogs. They need water. Okay? So they do not use their tongue to drink. Let's see what else. In our Fantastic Frog book, we learned that they have webbed feet that help them to swim. Did our Tale of the Tadpole book teach us that? Yeah, they both did. So we'll put that under in the middle of how they're the same. Talked about webbed feet. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, in our book, Fantastic Frogs, it talked about how frogs have to hide to stay safe from their predators. And our book, Tale of the Tadpole, it also talked about that. How when it's a tadpole, it talked about how the fish tried to eat it and the beetles. It did not talk about other animals trying to eat the frogs, though. So that would be a way that they're different. So Tale of the Tadpole, it talked about how fish and beetles try to eat the tadpole. And then Fantastic Frog book, it talked about how small animals might try to eat the frogs. And so they have to get really good at hiding, and sometimes they'll even camouflage themselves. All right, so you guys did really good talking about the similarities and differences of our two books. And that is really what's neat about books, is how you never know when you're going to learn something new in a book. Miss Walls learned lots of new things about frogs from this book. Thank you guys for listening to our story today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.